young adults. And I have had an opportunity to meet some of you, but I'm looking forward to getting to know all of you all in the future. Well, listen, today I have the privilege to sit with some of the giants in the gospel, giants of the faith, the Reverend Dr. Howard John Wesley and the Reverend Dr. Marcus D. Cosby. How are you all feeling today?
Good. I don't think they'd ever be called giants, but
listen, I think I think it's interesting. I think I'll always be that 16-year-old little boy watching you all on YouTube and just trying to learn from y'all. So this is obviously a privilege to be able to sit down.
Here's the crazy part. We remember being the 16-year-olds
Absolutely.
watching these giants in Chicago and Illinois at the National Baptist and at Hampton Ministers Conference.
But now
we
on
were sitting
YouTube.
now YouTube, right?
Y'all didn't have YouTube.
So you actually had to go to church and would sit there and watch it. Never in a million years dream someone would be watching us, man. Never.
That's crazy. Well, here we are. We're at the intersection, and I think it's interesting. I think personally, we're all in an interesting time. I think the church is also in an interesting time, and while the intersection, the name came from, the intersection of the two churches, Will Avenue and Alfred Street. I think the church finds itself at an intersection as well. Biden just reported or just said that the pandemic is over, right? And, and maybe we could look at that a little bit differently, but being that we are coming out or on the other side of a pandemic, how is that informing your preaching and your leadership now, currently where we are? Like, what are some things that you're seeing that is informing how you're going forward in the future here?
Yeah, man.
Well, of course, everyone has had to adjust, shift, make accommodations to the pandemic experience. I think if there was no shift in preaching, in a person's preaching, that person missed an opportunity
Amen.
to use the metaphor, ride the wave of the experiences of life. So I think all of us have had to make some shifts, some pivots. And I think the pandemic has informed us that life can take shifts on you that you didn't anticipate, and you have to be ready to either adjust to it, recover from it, or make the accommodations necessary to live through it. And so on the other side of the pandemic, on this side of the pandemic, I think we are learning that there is no such thing as church as usual.
Amen.
There's no such thing as just preaching as usual. There has to be some attention paid. Has to be some attention paid to the experience that these last 2 years have taught us and brought to us.
Absolutely. I think someone once said, when are we getting back to normal? Normal is not behind us, right? It's absolutely ahead of us. And trying to understand what church is now, as opposed to, we're living at a crossroad that I never thought the church would ever be. You never could have told us, as ones who grew up going to church every Sunday and being there all day, that there would ever be a time when church wouldn't happen, when church would close. Like just a world we didn't anticipate. And so now, on this other side, man, I'm trying to navigate into three realities. One, what does hybrid ministry look like? With the reality that we not only have our in-person worship services and people there, but there are folk who connect to Wheeler and Alfred Street who live thousands of miles away. And what is the church's responsibility to someone who says, I'm a member of Wheeler, but I don't even live in Texas? Or I'm a member of Alfred Street and I live in California. What's our responsibility? I think the other thing for us is, man, understanding the spirit of convenience, that church used to be synonymous with sacrifice. Now everything is convenient and on demand, right? So I was saying to someone the other day, Sabbath has lost the sacredness of Sunday. It's no longer just Sunday. It's whenever you want to pick up your phone. It's whenever you decide you want to watch the service. It's no longer 8, 10, noon. It's Monday, 3 p.m. It's Tuesday in my car. And how do we shape ministry in a place where there's no longer a deep commitment to sacrifice, but just a spirit of convenience? That, and I think that understanding that people who watch worship, used to be a time if you were in Wheeler and you sat down and Pastor Cosby wasn't preaching, you stuck. You stuck like Chuck. You can't get up and leave, right? Like, oh man, he ain't here today, right? But now I'm online. I see It's not Cosby, it's not Wesley. Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
I'm in a different state. I'm in a different church. And I hate to use the word competition, but we're closer to one another now. We bumped into someone the other day who was like, man, I watch both of y'all every Sunday. You never would have been able to do that, right? Before we got into this pandemic, that Wheeler and the Alpha Street were together. So I think there's a lot of different dynamics we're trying to figure out.
So I guess, would you consider the convenience almost like a disruption to church? And then if it is a disruption, how do you effectively lean into that? Because, I mean, you can fight it, but then I don't know how much.
And I think fighting it, so there are obviously going to be some churches that fight it, that push against it. There's always a movement in Christianity that says the culture is wrong. So we push against it. We lift up the standards of traditional Christianity. And then there are others that try to integrate, and there are others that want to fully jump into the deep waters. I think our churches are ones that are looking to always mix and integrate into culture. So I don't think disruption is a bad, negative thing. I don't think it's challenged our theology or our doctrine. It's just challenged our methodology. And the method has always got to be flexible.
I think it's interesting. It's of necessity that we begin to massage methodology, because if you don't, we allow both the world to pass us by and the church to get crippled. Because if we cripple the church with the culture passing us by completely, and the church stuck in an archaic space, and I'll use that word, it's a strong word, but archaic space, I think we have ceased to be the relevant church that we're supposed to be. I think culture and congregation have to consistently be in conversation for there to be the promotion of both in a way that gives some kind of credence to the people who invest themselves in a local congregation.
You just used the term relevant. So I would ask both of you, in what ways, how do you stay relevant, both in preaching and then also and even from a leadership perspective as well? Like, what are some almost practical habits that perhaps that you say, okay, that help you remain relevant today?
I know one of his, because we used to room together all the time. This Negro right here leaves his television on CNN 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Okay.
And it's actually affected me. But like that's, just always be absorbing what's happening in the world.
Yeah, it's a necessity. You have to know what's happening in the world. And now, to that point, part of my challenge is not knowing all the things that are happening locally in Houston, because I'm so busy looking at the national perspective. But I think it is necessary for us to have that picture of the world in our minds as we think about the people to whom we minister. Especially now, going back to Doc's point, especially now as we are dealing with a global congregation. We have to know what's happening in the world to properly minister to it. Going back to the old verbiage of the Bible in one hand and newspaper in the other. We have to be able to know what's happening in our world so that we can appropriately use the word to minister to people.
And I think, two components for me is always being in conversation with other clergy and colleagues to see what's happening, because you can become very isolating. If you're a faithful servant and steward of your local congregation, you can miss what's happening universally in the kingdom. So it's so important to go to different conferences. It's so important to see what others are doing. As Freddie Haynes made popular, there's nothing wrong being a copycat if you copy the right cat. So knowing what cats out there are doing and when they're pushing. But if I can be honest with you, part of my challenge is that I don't know if I'm always remaining culturally relevant, and I'm reaching that place where there are movements in culture that I just don't care to be relevant to, and I don't know. So I know that my retirement is coming. Like I know that my shelf life is reaching an end, because there are going to be movements that I go, you know what, like Instagram was it, TikTok, I can't, like Instagram was as far as I could go. I'm not getting into TikTok and whatever the new apps are. And so my dad used to say, you get old when there's new technology you don't want to learn, right? There are new movements that I just say, I don't care to learn about that. Like, I don't like this hip hop. Like Drake was about as far as I could go. Everybody else with this YBN, YP this, and you be I'm getting old, Ty. I'm getting old, and I realize it's time to start looking at the finish line.
So you made mention of you being old, and you mentioned earlier that you before we cut the cameras on that you've been preaching 32 years, and I just also want to state that I'm 30.
You have to repeat it, man. I mean, like you said that once, we got to do it again.
I just wanted to point that out.
Appreciate it.
So I guess it's interesting to hear both of you all make reference to the phase you are in, like this particular phase you are in ministry. I don't know. I think an interesting question would be where you are now. What would be some advice that you would give to the 25-year-old you based upon this particular phase where you are right now?
So my pastor, Pastor L.K. Curry in Chicago, used to use a phrase that he lived a charmed life. I picked up on that. And as I look at my life, I've lived a charmed life. I'm living a charmed life. So the 25-year-old me would have to be told, really pay attention and enjoy the journey. I can't say that I had a rough experience from 25 to where I am now. So I would say enjoy it. I've forgotten too much that I've lived through that was good for me, that I enjoyed. And so I pay attention to it. Take it in. Enjoy the journey. Stop rushing to the next thing and forgetting the thing that you just enjoyed. So I wouldn't say, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. Just enjoy this journey and take it all in. Because God has been really, really good to me. And the favor of God has been on my life in a way that astounds me. And I think I've rushed past much of it, trying to get to the next phase.
Yeah. I never would have seen 50 at 25, right? Like at 25, if someone told me you'd be 50 one day, I was like, that's old, right? I couldn't envision getting to that stage of life. And as I look back, I say for me, the two things would probably be one, how to remain disciplined, right? God has worked through my undisciplined moments, but I sometimes I don't know if I could be anywhere better than where I am now by God's grace, but there are times I look back and wish I'd been more disciplined in study, disciplined in my prayer life, disciplined in drawing close to the Lord, as opposed to letting the stress of ministry push me into unhealthy coping mechanisms in place. So be more disciplined. And then secondly, make certain to maintain those healthy Christian male friendships. Those were more valuable to me at 25 than I remember. When I first started pastor, we did a thing in my church called Rhema. And it was me, Cosby, and two other preachers that I invited in, and we would have a week together preaching. And I didn't know how valuable those moments outside the pulpit were going to be. Of being with my friends, of being with dudes that understood the journey, the call, and that life would take us in different directions where we barely see each other anymore. I mean, we're intentional about our friendship, but there are other dudes that I miss, and I'd be like, hey man, have you heard from such and such, or how's yada yada doing? I wish I'd held on close to those male friendships.
So I definitely I've heard pastors oftentimes speak of the isolation and the loneliness that comes as a result of answering this call to pastor. How has it's for you two, the friendship between you all? Could you speak to like how that's been a benefit? I mean, you kind of spoke to it a little bit, but maybe just a little bit more. Like how has the friendship kind of like helped you during those times of loneliness and times you maybe wanted to quit or things like that?
There's always someone I could call and cuss with who understood. And, we would have like, man, we need a Vegas weekend. It's time to get away. But you got to have someone that keeps you grounded and knows it. And it's very hard to find friendship. The Lord, charmed is a beautiful word, man. The Lord has charmed us into places where it's hard to find friends in ministry because not many of them are as charmed, right? Favored, blessed. We know we don't deserve this, but Alpha Street and Willard Avenue are amazingly beautiful congregations. and they have favored us and blessed us and allowed us to provide for our families in ways that are just amazing. But the air is thin up here. You know, the very few people you can really connect with and know that there's no envy, there's no jealousy. And then again, you know, 40 years of friendship will remove any of that. I mean, if Cosby signed a contract tomorrow for $20 million, I would rejoice. There would not be an envious bone in me.
Because I'd give you $5.
I'd appreciate you tie to Alpha HJ Wesley Ministry. You can cash at me, and God is good.
Yes, sir. I share.
But yeah, that you can look back 40 years and say, okay, this Cosby was there when I preached my first sermon in 1989. You know, in that congregation, and to know we go back that far. You need that kind of people. You need those kind of people in your life, man, who know you, who you can be authentic with, who won't let you lie to yourself, who remind you of what God is doing that you can't always see because you're frustrated with the trustees or the deacons, to remind you there's just a bigger picture. And that's really, I can't say that I don't see the hand of God in growing us together. Like, you know, from where we started in Chicago, our path of ministry has been almost identical, just in different cities.
And I think part of the beauty of our friendship is that in as much as we are similar, we are different. And so, you know, and he's
that's an amazing thing to be an alpha.
It's an amazing thing. Alpha. Let's just
amazing.
stay there.
We could stay there.
Like the remainder.
It's an amazing. And everybody, you know. Right,
Jesus said, I am Alpha. And so there is the necessity.
The blasphemy. The theological.
It's in the book. Read the book. So I think the contrast of the two of us is so important to our relationship, our friendship, and to our ministries. So you may or may not know, we used to work on every sermon together.
Yes, sir.
Every single sermon, every weekend we worked on together. And he would challenge me and I would challenge him. And he literally, I'll never forget that Saturday night when he told me that made no sense. And I used a different word. And I'll never forget it. The word was deportment. And he's like, they're not going to know what you're talking about. I said, yes, they will. No, and I used the word, and the people looked at me like, what are you doing? And so I switched the word to disposition because I'm alliterative in my preaching. And he was challenging me to take another. Yeah, iron sharpens iron. And so I treasure that. I treasure that. And when we run up on roadblocks to this day in sermonic presentation or preparation, we call one another. We don't have the same necessity in terms of preparation as we once did, as we were maturing in this, because we have a little more experience and a little more expertise now, so we can work, but work separately. But when we need one another's critique, or when we need one another's commentary, it is good to know that you have someone who will be honest with you and who will share with you and will tell you it doesn't make sense, or will tell you that right there.
Yeah, you got something there.
That's something. That's something.
Preach that, brother. Preach that.
And
let me borrow that.
And we've done that.
Do you give credit? Do y'all give credit?
No, not at all.
There was an online or internet where you could call you out. Right? Like,
it's harder now, because now people like, who started that?
Where'd that come from?
I saw. I'm kicking
I know.
When we get to heaven, I'm kicking.
There's an illustration that I got from him that I used,
and he became his signature. He killed on it. So I'm trying to go, what about me? What about me? I used it first. Cos killed on it. I walked into Trinity. Hey, Reverend Hudson. Like if it wasn't my friend, it'd be a problem.
And there's some things that he's taking.
Oh, for sure.
Whatever.
Hey, one of my best sermons in my youth, Cosby gave me the title of Breaking Up is Hard to Do.
Breaking Up is Hard to Do.
That came right from him. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I took that on revival everywhere I went. I was just 50 times.
He's good with illustrations. That's his thing. It's not my thing at all. I don't do illustrations. And so if I need an illustration about the hot sauce about which he is speaking, I call him. What's going to work here? I do alliteration. If he needs,
he reshapes text in ways that are just make it simple to see. Like Cos, if you watch him preach, especially if he does like a psalm, will take that thing from, he's going to read one verse
Mm-hmm.
and tell you that's enough. Right? Then he's going to shape from verse 1 to verse last in these alliterated movements. So you're going, how did he see that? Like, what third? Where did he get that? And then bam, like, and just puts it together. And his ability to see the entire text has always amazed me. You know, his gift of memory and it, you know, Cosby was preaching without notes long before I was. Long before. So, you know, I always tell people, I look at substance, structure, and style. Cos has always challenged me in all three. Not just the substance, but the structuring, you know, to make it look better. And then the style of presentation. You know, I sit and look and go, man, he's one of the best in our generation. At that.
So I guess, because it's funny to sit here and then just kind of see you all's friendship, right? And also speaking to the phase where you are currently, what would be some advice that you would give to the likes of me, those that are, you know, coming up the ranks, I guess, for lack of better verbiage, and hear me. I know I'm very familiar. You know, a lot of times older preachers give you the, you know, just be faithful, and I get it. I understand it, but beyond that, what is some advice that you would? Because also, living in a different time now, especially in 1989, you know, Pastor, when you preached that first sermon.
Were you alive?
No.
Oh,
We've been down this road. For the record, you were in the congregation. And you drove. For the record, you drove.
Yeah,
You were going to ask a question. Go right ahead.
So yeah, I guess what would be some advice that you could give?
So, you know, the be faithful is critical, right? I think one of the things that tends to plague your generations that you've seen ministry success so often that you fail to realize that's not always normal, and there's no HOV express lane to success in ministry. There are a lot of dues that are paid only because they're lessons that are learned that make you prepared to be a good steward when you land wherever God is going to favor and bless you to be. You've got to actually love people. And that's not, you don't learn that in seminary. You learn that by dealing with the unlovable. You've got to learn to take losses in boardrooms and in meetings because the L is the way to the W, right? That there's something bigger involved, that the well-being of the church is more important than your own personal support. That one of the things we're most committed to is keeping the mess out. That if there is a division, it doesn't come before the whole body, you know? And the one piece of advice I'm really going to land on that I've seen with you all that I hope you hear are the words of Paul when he wrote to Timothy and said, if you're going to be a leader in the church, you can't be a brawler. You can't like to fight. You have to learn to take the hit, to take the blow. It's almost like letting my child hit me. I may not like it, but it's not going to hurt me but so much. Sometimes you got to let that happen. You can't like to fight. And if you like to fight, this calling is not for you.
Some good leadership advice, and I appreciate that. I want to go back to what he said earlier, though, with regard to this journey. Get you some real friends, some people who you can be honest with, some people who will be honest with you. You mentioned isolation and loneliness in ministry. I think when you have real friends and you are a real friend to someone, I think it makes the journey a whole lot easier. When either of us needs to ventilate, we know we have somewhere safe where we can do that. And I think oftentimes in this current milieu, the challenge is we ventilate online, in social media, we ventilate in spaces that are not safe. And we ventilate in spaces and we can't get it back. We can't retrieve it. And that's so deleterious to the progress of the church and the progress of the church person. And so I suspect that I suspect I would challenge people to have healthy friendships, relationships. And even if that's one person, there's no other Howard John Wesley for Marcus Cosby. There's no other Howard John Wesley in my life. There's no other person who fits the categories, the boxes that Dr. Wesley fits. And so if it's just one person, that's fine. You don't need a gang of people. You just need somebody with whom you can relate and on whom you can rely.
Cosby and I are also very favored, and I don't know how much it exists for you all. We were favored with mentors in ministry.
Sure.
You know, you never hear Cosby without hearing the name L.K. Curry, right? Who is revered in Chicago for his years of ministry, for the work he's done globally, nationally, and I poured in Cosby. My father, you know, was pastor and mentored me, and I realized sometimes that's not a gift everyone has, and I don't want to miss it and pass it on. So, like right now, where I am in life, what's most important to me is legacy and pouring back into others, because I realized that was a fundamental part of the equation that led me to where I am, was that we had mentors who really sternly disciplined us. So let's talk about L.K. Curry's red pen.
Sure.
And I don't know if you all have this. Tell them about the red pen.
So he kept red pens in his pocket. And, well, there's several things about the red pen. He's going to write down the time at which you start your message and the time at which you end your message. And when he comes up to you after the message, he's going to say, you went too long right there. That message was too long. You should have started off. You shouldn't have done that. He'll write down all the things that you probably should have done better. And he would critique it. So it is not the, oh man, you were awesome. You killed. You did. You dumped that house. No, not with him. I've never heard him say more than good message, son. Whenever I finished a message.
Let's talk about my experience.
You tell him. It was
I preach that at Emmanuel Baptist Church. What's the address?
8301 South Davenport, 60620. Yes.
Preaching up, man. I'm preaching. I think I'm doing pretty good. It's youth day. It's my it's the 4 men in the fire sermon. That was my horse. I rode that thing. That sermon will roll wherever I went. I was youth day. I'm getting into it. Pastor Curry stands up, walks up behind me, taps me on the shoulder.
That's enough, son.
That's enough, son. And I sat down. I was like, amen. And went and sat down. And as much as I hate that moment, there's something you learn about that deference, that respect. Even if I didn't understand why, I know it made me a better preacher for him to tell me about time, and then for me to have enough respect for this man's pulpit to sit down because that's what he said to do, right? And for good or for bad, those lessons prepare you to be a pastor.
Got you. Okay, so that was great. Those were both great answers, and I guess I'd be interested to know how you all, because both of y'all have probably very extremely hectic schedules. How do you find balance? Like, how do you balance Dr. Cosby and the man? How do you balance Dr. Wesley and Howard Jones? Like, how do you make that? What do you do? Because I'm sure there are times you're just like, man, I'm tired. I don't feel like doing this, and you have to reset. And Pastor, you shook the world with Selah. So I would love to hear you speak to trying to attempt to find that balance.
So I believe in rest. I believe in it. I believe it is a necessity of life. It's the biblical mandate. We see the Lord Jesus doing it. God made sure that we understood rest. And we have perverted it by thinking we always have to be up to something, always doing something. I have a day off from work. I generally work 6 days a week. I have a day off. If I'm not traveling, I am so off that you would not believe that he really is a man who pastors a church. I am off. I am the best at doing nothing. I can stay in the bed and watch CNN, listen to CNN all day long and not be bothered by the fact that people think I'm a lazy bum. I'm good at that because it rejuvenates me, it recharges me. I work out. I love to go to the gym, love to work out. That is necessity because I have to take care of me. I have to take care of me or I can't present my body as a living sacrifice. And so my balance is rat race for 6 days. That one day, it's mine. And I am not going to be bothered by your need to make me feel some kind of way by the fact that I need my day to rest. And so I'm going to take it. So that's for me gives balance. I love to play. I love to watch movies. If I had the chance to ride horses more, I would ride horses more. That's me. I when I'm off,
I'm off. Yeah, good.
sir.
Yeah. And see, I think I'm learning more physical rest now that I'm older and my body's telling me that. For me, the bigger challenge is mental rest. I don't do well sitting. If I was in the bed all day long, I'd probably start itching, like something's wrong. Like, and it's. I'm not saying that in a good way. I'm saying that that's something I've learned, which is why Selah and sabbatical was so critical for me. I need to turn my mind in other directions that aren't ministry related, and they're typically three: either the creative outlet of cooking, which I am thrilled to do. I love shopping. I love cooking. I love taking cooking classes. So that's my creative outlet. Being a dad. There's nothing I enjoy more. Now, you really had me shut down? Tell me my sons have something to do.
Okay.
You know, and Alfred who? Like, because it's Deuce and Cooper, and that's all that matter to me. You know, because they are my greatest investment in life. And then finally, you know, learning to do things that I enjoy myself. So golfing, motorcycling, you know, jogging, things that really just allow me to expend my energy so that I can rest physically. But being able to, like Pastor Gaza said, shut down, and church does not own this day or this time at all.
Okay.
And helping the church to know that they don't own this time. I think that is critical because there have been pastors who thought they were being less of a pastor.
Yeah, amen.
When they did not.
That's the
take
model
time.
we were raised with.
Exactly. So my pastor, he said to me, I asked him, was he going to the church on any given day? He said, every day of my life, I go to the church. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so my dad told me to never turn down a preach engagement. Yeah, that ain't the best advice right now. Like, no, some of y'all I can't come preach for, you know, or me telling our sisters Garrett in my church, you know, the devil don't take a day off, neither do I. And she said to me, why is the devil your role model? Right? God ought to be your role model, and God took a day off.
Well, listen, we've come to the end of the intersection. Thank you all so much for tuning in and listening. And
interesting phrase, the end
of the intersection.
Well,
let's go preach one day.
You know, we deal with words.
The end of the intersection. So we've come to the end. Please, hey, let us know in the comments if you think we should do this again. But as we're leaving, both of you all have, you know, graced us with your wisdom. Could you, I guess, as we depart, speak to what you see as the next phase of your ministry, and some things that you're optimistic about pertaining to the church?
Yeah. So I see the finish line of my ministry, of my pastoral ministry. I see it. I planned the date of the end of my pastoral ministry. I'll not share it here because it will be all over the world once we finish. But I see the end. And right now, we've just been blessed to build a building. So that part of my work is done. I don't think I'll have to build anything else before my ministry is complete at Wheeler Avenue. Now I have to build leaders. So I think part of what I have to do for the next several years is to build leaders and to make sure that the 21st century church that is at Wheeler understands how we make disciples and build the Lord's church there and in our community. I have a global desire for ministry, and so we have some work over in Africa that I want us to continue and build and make stronger. So I think now I'm trying to use Dr. Word, make sure that legacy is in order. I'll make sure legacy is in order. Have 5 children. We're blessed to have 5 children. 2 of them are grown, 3 of them are teenagers. And I want to make sure that they have a life that is absolutely even more charmed than mine. So I want to make sure that they go to another level. Ms. Cosby and I are trying to make sure that we put everything in order to ensure that they have a life that is phenomenal because we have intentionally made it such. And so I think I'm looking now at what will I leave to this world as a consequence of having been gifted and graced the way I have. But I also see the finish line,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm excited
Mm-hmm.
about the finish line. We have, because of the way the Lord has blessed us, had to preach a whole lot
Mm-hmm.
in these years that we've been preaching.
Mm-hmm.
We've had to preach a whole lot. I was preaching 4 Sunday services for 14 years. Pastor has had to preach multiple services for more than a decade. That's a lot of preaching. Most preachers don't preach as much as we have in this span of time. So taking care of ourselves is important, and knowing that retirement is going to be necessary while we're still in our right minds and have the physicality that we need to enjoy the last years of our lives. So I'm looking at how do I finish out what I think the Lord has called me to do, at the same time build people who will be able to succeed me, not just in the pastoral leadership ministry, but in leadership period in the Lord's church, and make sure that the Cosby family is so well off that I leave a heritage for my children's children.
Real similar and short. You know, I've not been known to say right now, there's nothing else I want to add to my resume other than a strong finish. You know, I don't need another degree. I don't need another award. I don't need another conference, preacher, highlight. I just want to finish strong at Alfred Street. So for me, that means 2 things. One, seeing us through and into what new ministry looks like on the other side of this pandemic. I think that that's a major assignment for me, to position this church that was established in 1803 to be able to make its way to 2053, right? That we're pointed in the right direction. And then the second piece, like Pastor Cosby, for me would be helping identify and prepare the successors in leadership. Very rarely, and this is another area where we were blessed, very rarely do strong churches of our sizes endure succession. They typically fall off with one pastor. And for it to go from, you know, Bill Lawson to Cosby, and from John Peterson to Howard John Wesley, and continue to grow is amazing. That doesn't happen everywhere. We saw it with a couple of our colleagues, though, with Otis Moss coming in from Jeremiah Wright, when we saw Jawanza Colvin coming in for Otis Moss Jr., the father. You know, we were part of a generation that succeeded these great giants, but you've heard it said, success without a successor is a failure. So we want to, you know, help identify and prepare how we transition to the next place of leadership. And then finally, you know, I just want to drop my golf handicap about 5 strokes so that I can play golf for the rest of my life and take on any challengers who want to lose some money, because that's all I'm going to do. I'm be on the golf course, smoking cigars and taking folks' money. That's what I'm doing.
I see you as your water. That's all I see. You as your water.
Yes, sir.
I
the greens. I see fairways calling my name.
Water.
Yes, sir. I refuse to die in that pulpit and be rolled out.
Amen.
Refuse to.
Amen.
No, that's not God's will for my life.
Got you. Well, thank you, Dr. Cosby, and thank you, Dr. Wesley. I really enjoyed it. So I know those watching really enjoyed it as well. So thank you all so much, and we'll see you all next time around.
Thank y'all.
Peace.